If you got a couple of seconds, I want to tell you a fascinating story about a guy who was struggling to pay his bills and came up with an idea and wrote a book and sold over 3 million copies of that book over the course of a couple of years. The guy's name is Joe Karbo, and he wrote this book back in 1973. The name of the book is The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. If you can see up here, it says that the value of this book is $1,000. Joe actually sold 3.2 million copies of this book for $10 a piece in the newspaper. And he wrote this really great ad, which I actually have, and I'll give you a chance to get that in just a second. And but what essentially happened was he was getting up to 70,000 checks in the mail every week. So many that Joe had to have 42 full-time staff just to open and process the checks and process the orders to send out the books. And the interesting thing is he lived right up the street from me here. I'm in Newport Beach, California, and he lived right up the street in Huntington Beach, Sunset Beach, which is just north of Huntington. And he literally created an info publishing empire with just this $10 book. He didn't have a back end or anything else that he was selling. The reason that story is important is that he just had one idea that he was able to use this model with and completely change the outcome and future of himself and his family with what he did there. And it's a pretty interesting thing because I've been doing the same thing with a different model. Obviously, I'm not selling in the newspaper, but I started this back in 1997 and have been running internet companies ever since. Some of them selling products just like this book, not necessarily how to get rich. This is actually the first time I've ever sold anything that tells you my story or any of the things that I've done to make it. But I started out back, I was working at a company called Bear Stearns, which was a stock brokerage. And I quit there and started working, running my first internet business. And if you can tell, I don't know if you can see that, that's from my first conference that I went to back in 1997. And I went to, here's a tape from a guy named Joe Polish from 2001. Here's this is just showing how old I am. You're probably watching this and saying, who is this old guy? Here's an old VHS tape I have. I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of this stuff in my office from Gary Halbert. And here's a manual. I went to an old Dan Kennedy seminar back in 2000 and all these different things. And the reason I tell you all this is that just like Joe Karbo, this business of selling information online has been a great business for me for the last 22 years. And like I said, I started in 1997. Over those years, I've sold not as many as Joe Karbo. It would be cool if I'd sold 3 million. I've sold over 600,000 units of my own information products through that time. But I charge more than $10, so it kind of evens out. But up until now, I have stayed under the radar by design on purpose. And what I mean by that is I haven't sold anything to the marketplace teaching what I do. I have a couple of courses that I sold in very specific niches to very specific people, like how to run a certain kind of YouTube ad or Facebook ad, a certain kind of Google ad, things like that, but nothing broad explaining the whole process until now. And as you can imagine, you don't get to live in Newport Beach unless your business is doing well. I've been fortunate through the years in that I learned from a lot of experience and trial and failure and things like that, and from some good people that I bought courses and things from that taught me stuff. And I've been able to have this business pay for, an incredible lifestyle. We have, live here in Newport Beach. It's paid for cars, boats, yachts. I actually own a golf course in South Carolina. etc. And what I'm doing for the very first time, the reason I'm making this video is because this is YouTube, and so videos are probably the way to do this. But what I'm doing for the very first time is I am doing a physical newsletter, and I call it the Infinite ROI Marketing Letter. And the reason I call it Infinite ROI is because there are products that I created back in 2003, 4, 5, 6 that are still selling today. That work was done 15, 16, 17 years ago, and the return on my investment of time and effort and money to create those products is at this point trending towards infinity because I don't have to do the work again. You know, the challenge with selling your labor or your expertise or your coaching or any of those things by the hour is that, you know, you have a linear delivery of it, and so there's no real leverage or scale there. Whereas if you create something that's truly valuable, it can't be just, you know, BS. It has to be really valuable. If you create something like that, then over time, as you sell more and more and more of these things, then the actual return on your investment of time, energy, and money becomes, you know, close to infinite. And so what I'm going to be doing in this letter, where is it? Here it is. Here's the first one. I just wrote the first one here in September. And what I'm going to be doing in this letter is giving you insights from the front lines of a person who, you know, has run and is run. I'm currently running multiple 7-figure businesses and have run, you know, over 10 different 7-figure businesses through the years, sold a couple, and what it's like to come up with the right ideas, what it's like to fail. You know, I've failed a lot, as you can imagine, but the testing, the crazy stories. And this first newsletter here, I tell the story of how I made over $1 million selling Vaseline for $50 a can, and actually it still sells. That's the story right there. That Vaseline still sells to this very day. We sold a couple of them today, and so, you know, funny, crazy stories like that. Advice about you if you're looking to market a business, or whether it's an information business or pretty much any business online with Facebook, YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, any of these ad platforms that are out there. Instagram obviously is the same thing as Facebook. Tips, tricks, tactics, etc. What's working now in the marketplace. Ultimately, what I've got is I've got a little sales letter that has, you should be able to click on something and go there, and that sales letter, it's not fancy, it's by design, and it's not a video by design. I want you to read it and make an informed decision. And the newsletter is super cheap. We're not trying to make millions of dollars on the newsletter, but once you've read some of the newsletter, then you will probably want to do something else with this, maybe one day, who knows. But anyways, that's it. That's the big pitch. Go click on the button and check it out. The sales letter is like less than a 5-minute read, but it'll give you all the backstory about me and the backstory of why I'm doing this and the whole thing soup to nuts. So look forward to sending you this newsletter if you buy. Thanks. Bye.